UFC on ABC3, Ortega versus Rodriguez takes place this weekend, and I'm going to go through the entire card, starting with the early prelims, ending with the main event, giving my prediction and breakdown for every single fight on the card, starting with the early prelim opener of Jessica Penne versus Emily Ducote. I'm going to be going with Emily Ducote here in the early prelim opener. I reckon she'll get this one done by 29-28 decision over Jessica Penne. She has big power, and that's something that I like to see in women's divisions because it's not very often that you see that kind of power. I mean, she finished off Danielle Taylor, a girl who actually beat Jessica Penne by decision before in her career, by head kick finish after landing like a right hook that just froze her in midair and then followed it up with a head kick and put her away badly. So it was a really good win. She's had a bunch of other good wins recently as well. She's on a 3-fight winning streak. She lost to Kanako Murata by split decision, who is currently a 12-2 women's fighter as well. And she recently fought in the UFC, but she lost to Verna Jandiroba. And that's not too bad. It's Verna Jandiroba. She's reasonably okay. And I'm going to be going with Emily Ducote here over Jessica Penne. Jessica Penne doesn't know how to fight. I was actually kind of thinking about maybe taking the underdog here in Jessica Penne because it is women's MMA, so there's no real deciding what's going to happen here. They could just go out there and look like they don't know what they're doing. So I think I'm going to side with the power of Emily Ducote. The common opponent that they have, that Emily Ducote made look way easier than Jessica Penne did. And Jessica Penne just can't really fight. She does have some good leg kicks at range, and she is quite long for that division, but I still feel as though Emily Ducote's power is going to be the difference. And I think in women's divisions, when you have that power, even if you're getting outlanded by quite a bit, just those big thudding shots are going to make way more impact in a judge's scorecards. So I'm going to side towards Emily Ducote here. Moving on up the card, Dwight Grant versus Dustin Stoltzfus. I'm going with Dwight Grant in the middleweight division. Dustin Stoltzfus, other than looking like Tom Hardy, there's no real impressive part of his career whatsoever. Like, he just doesn't really do anything good, really. I mean, he looked okay against Kyle Dorcas, but lost. But in hindsight, looking okay against Kyle Dorcas, seeing as he's lost so much recently, isn't really as good of a fact. Like, we used to think Kyle Dorcas was going to be a big deal in the division, but then Stoltzfus lost to him, but it was like, it's okay, it's Kyle Dorcas, he's great. But now Dorcas has been losing a bunch of fights, so it doesn't really look so good in hindsight. Also, a loss to Rodolfo Vieira in any way doesn't look the best in hindsight, but, you know, Rodolfo Vieira is very good. But it's just like, he can't really take advantage on the feet with any of these opponents, and he's not really a great grappler either. And losing to GM3 just means you are the lowest of the low in the middleweight division. So I'm going to trust in Dwight Grant. He came up in a much tougher division. He's bigger than Dustin Stoltzfus, and I think he's got a little bit of a reach advantage as well over Dustin Stoltzfus. So I'm going to side with Dwight Grant. Power advantage. Came up in a tougher division. Sure, Dustin Stoltzfus is younger, so maybe he's going to improve a little bit more here, but if we're not relying on improvements, which is pretty risky to do, I'm going to side with Dwight Grant getting a KO here. Stoltzfus is pretty hard to finish, but he has been KO'd. He had some kickboxing fights where he got finished in, but I feel like Dwight Grant's going to have too much power compared to the other opponents of Dustin Stoltzfus, and a jiu-jitsu expert in Rodolfo Vieira was just out jabbing him for 3 rounds. So I'm going to side with Dwight Grant getting this one done. Much better division that he came up in. Middleweights are garbage. Dwight Grant gets it done. Moving on. Up the card, Dustin Jacoby versus Jung. I'm going to be siding with Jung here. He's the underdog, and I'm going to pick him. His win over Nuzachukwu is looking really good. Now listen, it did land on the forearm, and I have no idea how Nuzachukwu went out to that, but I think it's fair to say that this guy's got some good power, and other than one bad performance against Sam Alvey, he mixes up grappling really well. I don't know if you guys remember his William Knight fight that he had, but he was throwing William Knight around. William Knight is a ridiculously strong guy. Really, really strong. He's on something 100%. And Jung was just tossing him around in that fight and dominating the grappling exchanges. And I don't think Dustin Jacoby, I was going to call him, or Justin Jacoby. I don't think Dustin Jacoby is going to deal well with that grappling. We saw against Maxim Grishin, just someone mixing in the takedowns was good enough to get the win over him, even though he actually won that fight by robbery decision. Maxim Grishin got the job done. He should have won that fight rounds 1 and 3 after watching it back. And he mixed up the grappling really well in that fight, and it sort of made Jacoby's stand-up way worse because he's normally a guy who likes to tap with kicks on the outside and move around a lot and just throw a bunch of kicks non-stop. So if you've got a bit of a takedown threat, it's going to leave him with the hands to deal with, and I feel like with the hands, Jung has a reach advantage and a power advantage. Sure, Dustin Jacoby's better on the feet, but I can really see Jung being able to throw this guy around a little bit, keep him against a cage, knee him to the fire a couple of times, beat him up against a cage with maybe some elbows as well. Dustin Jacoby's good, but Jung, 28 years of age, rapidly improving, on a big win streak right now in that division as well, so I think I'm going to get aboard the Jung train in the light heavyweight division, so I'm liking the way he's looking so far in his career. 28 years of age, trains at Korean top team. Not much to say about that, but it's top team, so it's got some good endorsements, some good funding of a gym. It's not just some random gym in the middle of nowhere in Korea. But either way, he beat Nozuchukwu. He beat William Knight. He beat Mike Rodriguez. He beat Kadis Ibragimov when he was 8-0 and finished him in the third round. He's good. I think it's time to stop doubting him, and to have him be an underdog, a little bit risky to me. So I'm going to have to go with him as an underdog. I can't really take Jacoby as a favourite here. Jung's got good power. And also, Dustin Jacoby, he's been making it too close, in my opinion. Like his last fight against Mikhail Alekseychuk, very, very close. Mikhail Alekseychuk's very good, I understand. But still, too close for comfort in certain areas. And then you've got his fight against John Allen. Little bit risky there as well. I like his activity, but at the same time, he's only being active because he's 34 years of age and he has to make something happen now if he's going to make some money. I don't like how close he makes it against certain opponents. And I think Jung's going to be one of those opponents, but he's young enough and improving enough to win a little bit harder in those grappling exchanges. Watching him throw around William Knight, you can throw around Dustin Jacoby, in my opinion, pretty easily. He was doing it in the first round as well, so I trust Jung to mix up the grappling here and get it done. And even if he doesn't, it'll just leave it as a boxing match because Jacoby's going to be too scared to throw kicks anyway if he tries taking him down. So moving on. Up the card, Bill Algeo versus Herbert Burns. I'm going to go with Bill Algeo. Herbert Burns is a finisher. He loses, I want to say 100% of his fights that go past the second round. And Bill Algeo don't really get finished and hasn't been finished for a very long time. And he's very good at staying in there for the fight. I know he took this on short notice, but in his position, he doesn't need to take it on short notice because he's on a win streak. He's on a win right now over Joe Anderson Brito, and he took big shots in that fight as well. So he does have a solid chin. He took big shots against Spike Carlisle as well and bounced back later on in that fight too. I just feel as though he's going to be able to sort of get out of the early rounds against Herbert Burns. He's a big guy for the division. He's a lot bigger than Herbert Burns. Herbert Burns might be a little bit stronger, a little bit more muscled up for the division, but at the same time, you look at some of the wins here. Sure, he beat Nate Landwehr, and that's a good win, but Evan Dunham, Derek Minner, you know what I'm saying? I don't know how much to really value these wins that he's getting, and then when it went into the second round against Daniel Pineda, he just kind of crumbled immediately and really started to gas out badly. He has some wins in the second round, but again, if it goes past the second round, his last two losses are by decision. He lost late in the second round to Daniel Pineda as well. I feel like if we get past the halfway point, we're really going to see Bill Algeo start to take over. So I'm going to call a Bill Algeo decision win. 29-28, winning the end of the second round hard and winning the round because of it. And then dominating the third round. So maybe like a 29-27 win for Bill Algeo. Winning the last two rounds, especially in the third where he might get a 10-8. Moving on. Up the card, Ricky Simone versus Jack Shaw. Jack Shaw. I don't know if I'm going to be going with Jack Shaw. I'm not too sure about that. I'm going to be going with Ricky Simone, I feel like. Jack Shaw is good, but I was rewatching the Hunter Azure fight. Listen, him and Timo Valiev, sure you can say his grappling held up against Timo Valiev, and you can kind of say that, but at the same time, they didn't really have much extended grappling exchanges. That was a stand-up fight the majority of the time, and they kind of just neutralized each other. But watching Jack Shaw try and get real offensive grappling off by muscling Azure around against a cage, sure he got it off and he was winning some of the exchanges, but Hunter Azure, who is a good wrestler, don't get me wrong, not big for the division, was able to kind of just gas him out a bit in certain areas. He won the second round. The third round was extremely close in that fight as well. That was a very close fight that he had. And it just worried me a little bit because I don't know if he's going to be really picking apart Ricky Simone on the feet. Ricky Simone's fought very good guys in the bantamweight division. Sure, he can be chinned. He got chinned by Uriah Faber. He rocked Faber and then rushed in and got clipped afterwards by rushing in a little bit like a downy. But either way, he beat Rafael Assunção. And one thing I noticed in him is that his stand-up is massively improved. Massively improved. He's got heat in his hands. He's a massive guy for the division. He's way more muscle bound, and he can keep a good pace over 3 rounds as well. He's so much more muscle bound than Jack Shaw. And that KO that he got against Asuncao was so slick looking. Like, this guy's made massive improvements in his stand-up. He fought Rob Font to a close decision loss. He's fought guys like Ray Borg who have great wrestling and great scrambles and was able to get the better of him. I just feel as though Jack Shaw's not going to be able to sort of lead the dance. And I think on the back foot, it's going to be on Ricky Simone being able to get some of these takedowns. Even if Jack Shaw gets right back up, you got to think about points being scored. So I'm going to go with Ricky Simone with a split decision win as the underdog here. I think he's being slept on quite a bit. I have Welsh ethnicity. Like, I should be rooting for Jack Shaw, but I've got to just be unbiased here. Like, I've been singing the praises of Jack Shaw for a long time, but I've equally been singing the praises of Ricky Simone. So I'm going to side with Ricky Simone here. Power advantage on the feet. And sometimes it takes a little bit too long for Jack Shaw to get going, in my opinion. So I'm going to trust in Ricky Simone to get the better of some of these grappling exchanges with his strength, and then have a bit more power on the feet to sort of make Jack Shaw a little bit too hesitant. Maybe Shaw wins the 3rd round clear, but I think the first 2 rounds, Simone's going to edge it out by just being a bit too strong in those clinch and grappling exchanges. Ricky Simone gets it done. Moving on. Way more experienced as well at the top level. Moving on. Punahele Soriano versus Dalcha Lungiambula. No idea why this is above Simone versus Shaw on the card, but either way, how many more times do they have to lose before you stop putting him in the headliner of the prelim spot? Punahele Soriano. Dalcha Lungiambula, he's all looks, really. I think that's one of the biggest examples of that we've had in the UFC. Dude looks absolutely terrifying, but his cardio is just weak as hell because of it. Like, and he doesn't have a corrupt pharmacist as a father, so he can't look that way and still have great cardio like Usman. But I just feel as though, like, it's kind of been... He's not going to finish Punahele. It's very difficult to finish Punahele Soriano. He's an extremely tough guy, and I feel like if he doesn't get finished, he's going to build as the fight goes on. He looked great against Brendan Allen, but lost in a close fight. But Brendan Allen, I reckon, would probably take down Dalcha Lungiambula in the later rounds and finish him off. And then Nick Maximov as well. I know he got caught in a dash choke by Andre Petrosky, but at the same time, he is a good grappler, so he was able to grapple in some moments. Arguably on damage, you should give that fight to Punahele Soriano, so I feel as though Punahele Soriano, nothing to lose here. I don't see him getting finished, and he's got big power early on, and really good tight hooks in the inside, and I feel like I can see Dalcha Lungiambula over-swinging some shots, not being too technical, and then Punahele Soriano catching him as the fight goes on and landing some good body shots and landing some good knees in the clinch if Dalcha fails a couple of takedowns and stuff like that, and just working the body like he was against Nicholas Maximov. And I can see Punahele Soriano winning this one by like 2nd round TKO, brutal fashion, finishes off Dalcha Lungiambula on the ground with ground and pound. Punahele Soriano gets it done. Moving on to the main card, Lauren Murphy versus Miesha Tate. I'm going to go with Miesha Tate here. Lauren Murphy has no idea what she's doing. She's terrible at fighting. Miesha Tate has been around for a long time. She's very experienced. She also looks like she has no idea what she's doing, but, you know, she's only like a 30-fight veteran in the women's MMA. So you can't really count on her to really know what she's doing. But I'm going to side towards Miesha Tate here. If she can make 125 well, plus it was Lauren Murphy's fault that this fight got postponed as well, I believe. If she can make 125 well, she's going to be very strong. I don't see her getting out-grappled. I see her being able to grapple with Lauren Murphy and win those grappling exchanges. And I also just don't see any good skill from Lauren Murphy on the feet, whereas Miesha Tate, in some few moments, like in 5% of her striking exchanges, actually looks like a, you know, 1 year, 14-year-old boy would in like a Muay Thai class, like for 1 year of training. Like, she's good at technique for that 5% of her striking exchange. So I feel like she's just going to get the better of this one compared to the no skills, no quality in terms of level of fighting in Lauren Murphy. And I'm going to go with Miesha Tate getting this one done. Too big, too strong, younger as well, 35 compared to the 38 of Lauren Murphy. So I'm going to be going with Miesha Tate getting this one done. 29-28, not split decision, unanimous decision win for Miesha Tate. She wins like the first 2 rounds clearly, but starts to slow down because of the weight cut, and then Lauren Murphy gets it done. So let's move on immediately. Miesha Tate gets it done. Shane Burgos versus Charles Jourdain. Now, this is guaranteed chaos, and I can't wait for this fight. I really can't wait for this fight. This is going to be an amazing fight. It really is. Do I believe Jourdain is going to finish off Shane Burgos? No. And if I don't believe Charles Jourdain is going to finish off Shane Burgos, I watched him get melted by Julian Erosa, and I can't unsee it. I watched that fight again. Sure, he was doing good, but Erosa just kept the pressure on him, ripped to the body, took every shot he has, and I consider Erosa as a guy who doesn't really have a good chin. Let's be real. I don't see Shane Burgos shooting in like Lando Venata and getting guillotined. And even before that, Lando was sort of like having his way at range on the feet with Charles Jourdain, as long as that fight lasted anyway. But Julian Erosa is a guy I consider to not have a good chin. Shane Burgos is a guy I consider to have a good chin. And Jourdain just slows down with all these explosive moments, and he's so trigger happy to throw big moves, and I feel as though Shane Burgos is going to take those shots. Maybe he gets rocked at one moment early on and has to fight back through it, but I just feel like Charles Jourdain's going to get hurt in the later rounds of this fight, and Burgos is going to start ripping the body at the end of round 2, and then I think he's going to get a finish in round 3 by TKO to ground and pound, finishing off Charles Jourdain. Shane Burgos gets it done. We saw what he did against Makwan Amirkhani. Different style matchup. Makwan's a bit more of a heavy grappler compared to Jourdain being a bit more of a heavy striker. But I think the result's going to be the same. Him pinning down Charles Jourdain on the ground, punching his body, kneeing the body as he's getting back up, beating him up against a cage and stuff like that. I just saw Julian Erosa walk down Jourdain and beat him up, and listen, Lando Venata's good, but he got caught on the ground. All good. And then Charles Jourdain, you look at some of the other wins that he has, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, Marcelo Rojo took it on short notice and gassed out later on, but even he was winning early on in that fight as well. Andre Ewell, by decision. You won the fight clearly, fair play, but bantamweight coming up to featherweight, not really a great bantamweight in the first place. Andre Philly got it done against Charles Jourdain in a very close fight, but he was able to tough it out and come back in the later rounds. A draw to Joshua Kalibau, who's good, but arguably could have won that fight. Like, I just feel like Charles Jourdain is always going to look amazing against a lower level competition, but this jump up is way too quick. I wouldn't have minded a Charles Jourdain versus Nate Landwehr in the meantime. Why can't we get those matchups in the meantime? He's a young guy, 26. Do we have to jump him straight in against Shane Burgos? I think this is a little bit too much too soon. If he can't KO Shane Burgos early, I don't think he gets it done. And if people are talking about, you know, like the head movement of Shane Burgos, he does get hit quite a bit. He's got a 6.5-inch reach advantage here with the hands. I feel as though he's going to be okay, even if he doesn't move in time. He's going to be okay to get out of the way of a lot of these shots if that's something that he's working on. So I feel like Shane Burgos has this in his hands. If he doesn't, he might get finished early and it might be the end of the chin of Shane Burgos. But I do believe that Shane Burgos gets this one done. And an amazing fight. Maybe he gets rocked early on by a head kick of Charles Jourdain, but he recovers and stuffs a takedown and shoots a takedown and gets out of a bad position here and there. And then lands some body shots and stuff like that. I just think as the fight goes on, I can see Jourdain melting here quite badly. So I'm going to go with Burgos getting this one done by TKO late with body shots. Moving on up the card, Matt Schnell versus Suma Mudaerji. I'm going to be going with Suma Mudaerji here. Matt Schnell has no chin and weirdly bad submission defense at times. Like, I know Brandon Royval's good, but Schnell's good. He's got good hands. I just feel as though Suma Mudaerji's so elusive on the feet. He barely gets hit clean anyway. He moves around a lot. I was picking Manel Cap to maybe get the better of Suma Mudaerji in a close decision, but I feel as though Matt Schnell has served his purpose. He's had a bunch of fights cancelled. Then he lost against Brandon Royval as well. Turn him right back around after that fight. Get him right back in there after getting... He knocked down Royval. Royval hurt him back. And then he got a guillotine on Royval. But then Royval got a guillotine on him. And he immediately tapped with both hands. It just seems like there's a bit of a mental retardation in Matt Schnell's head. It is a little bit tough to put money on him and sort of go for him here. So I'm going to be going with Suma Mudaerji. Younger guy, longer reach, uses it well. I think he's got pop in his hands as well. He showed that against Malcolm Gordon, who's now somehow on a win streak because this division makes no sense. So I'm going to be going with Mudaerji being able to TKO Matt Schnell in the second round. Maybe they go to scrap for a bit in the first, and then Mudaerji rocks him, follows it up with some good shots, and just starts picking at him and beating him up. And then Schnell gets finished against the cage. Mudaerji gets this one done. At flyweight, Matt Schnell just has too much possibility to get finished. And I don't like that at all. I really don't like that. At flyweight especially. You shouldn't be getting finished at flyweight. But he seems to keep getting finished. Like KO, hilarious fashion. Or getting submitted in hilarious fashion. And I can't trust that against Mudaerji, who's got good hands. Good range finding. And good takedown defense as well. I don't see a hole in his grappling. So Mudaerji gets this one done by TKO in the third round. Moving on. Or the second round. Moving on up the card. Jingliang versus Muslim Salikhov. I'm going to go with Jingliang. Muslim Salikhov, although very good, maybe in his heyday, back in the 80s, he is 38 years of age. And he wasn't looking good, in my opinion, against Francisco Trinaldo. Francisco Trinaldo, I know it's Francisco Goatnaldo, and he is quite good, but you shouldn't be making it somewhat competitive with him. And Trinaldo has moments where he cracks you with big shots. Like, I feel as though Muslim Salikhov, when he first came into the UFC, he lost to Alex Garcia in his debut by submission and got taken down and out-grappled there. But then also, like, he beat Ricky Rainey and he was looking good and he was having some finishing ability. And he took Laureano Strapoli to a reasonably competitive decision, and that didn't look too great for him. And he KO'd Nordin Talev. Like, he has some moments of excellence, but when you really look back at the opponents that he did it against, he should have lost to Alessio Zaleski dos Santos, you know? And I feel like Jingliang, who melted Alessio Zaleski dos Santos and finished him in the later rounds, is going to maybe melt Muslim Salikhov and land those big shots as well. So I can see Jingliang winning this one. There's no threat of a takedown for Jingliang. That seems to be something that he hates in fights. He loves a stand-up match. He's very unorthodox at times on the feet. He'll throw a side kick to the body and stuff like that. So I like his movements here. He's not going to be too orthodox, throwing jab right hands against Muslim Salikhov that he can easily counter. So it's going to be wild. It's going to be a messy fight. Jingliang's got an iron chin. I don't see him getting KO'd by Muslim Salikhov. So I can see Jingliang getting this one done either by decision, beating up Salikhov and dropping him in some of the rounds, or a third round finish from Jingliang, eventually melting down Salikhov, who is, at the end of the day, 38 years of age at welterweight. And Jingliang's got an inch and a half reach to work with as well. So I'm going to be going with Jingliang here. Power difference, chin difference, cardio difference, performance difference against the same common opponents. I think Jingliang gets this one done. Moving on up the card, Michelle Waterson versus Amanda Lemos. This is interesting, but I'm going to be going with Amanda Lemos over Michelle Waterson. She's just got a bit of a power difference. I don't see her getting out-grappled by Michelle Waterson. And I know she got caught in a standing arm triangle by Jessica Andrade, but Jessica Andrade is a man, so it's tough to deal with that in the women's strawweight division. Michelle Waterson just doesn't really look good ever. In hindsight, she had a better performance against Esparza than Rose Namajunas. I mean, it was pretty much the same. They did nothing at range for the entire fight, but she is good. She just seems to not deal well with power, and that was a big difference in the Marina Rodriguez fight. She kept getting caught with big power shots, and it kind of made her shudder backwards a little bit and not really want to commit as much, and that was in a 5-rounder as well. So in a 5-rounder, her experience may carry her into those later rounds like it did against Angela Hill, where I actually believe she should have lost that fight. But either way, I'm going to be going with Amanda Lemos. Too much power difference. And I just think she's going to hurt Michelle Waterson bad. 36 years of age, been around the game for a long time, taken a lot of damage at this point in the game as well. It's not just the age, because between them they're 36 and 35, but I feel like Michelle Waterson is just too much damaged, taken in her career. Reach disadvantage of 3 inches. She might be able to throw some funny kicks. Yeah, and look cool and karate this, yahoo! But she's just going to get clocked with some big punches, some big kicks as well. I think Amanda Lemos is going to go out there with big power, drop her in certain moments, and lose the third round, and Michelle Waterson will get hailed as how tough and brave she is in the third round to bounce back. But I think in the first 2 rounds, Lemos' power is going to be the difference, and she'll get it done that way. Moving on to the main event, Brian Ortega versus Yair Rodriguez. Now, when does the chin of Brian Ortega fail him, is the question. Yair Rodriguez, sure, he takes damage, but he doesn't really, get brutalized like Brian Ortega does. So it's worrying for Brian Ortega in terms of how much damage he's going to continue to take. You've got Yair Rodriguez, 29 years of age to 31 years of age of Brian Ortega. I just don't see Yair finishing him. Yair is very dangerous, and I think a lot of people end up saying when he fights people like, man, look at the chin of this guy. Look at the chin of that guy. Wow, this guy's got such a great chin. Is it that, or is Yair Rodriguez just not all that powerful? Sure, he throws crazy kicks. I think Ortega's footwork and movement that he's utilized recently, especially against a Korean zombie, which he had a much better performance against than Yair Rodriguez did. Yair was losing that fight. Fair play, he took it on quite short notice, but was losing that fight until he landed that elbow at the end. We all know of the elbow by now. But he was losing that fight very clearly. Ortega was schooling the Korean zombie in their fight. And I feel like his unorthodox movement and switching stances on the outside is going to make Yair find it a bit more difficult to land those sort of crazy kicks that he throws and head kicks that he goes for and front kicks to the face that he goes for. I think he would prefer a guy who's a bit more stationary, like Holloway even was when they fought each other. Holloway was just hands up, very still in the middle, just trying to counter Yair Rodriguez's boxing, and he did a decent job of it and was able to take him down. I just feel as though one thing that's changed in Brian Ortega is his grappling offense. I think he's a little bit better with his takedowns. Even after round 3 against Volkanovski, he still scored a takedown in round 4 and almost had a dash choke, but Volk don't tap to nothing, so he escaped it and landed some big shots there and dominated round 4. But Brian Ortega, I'm going to trust his cardio a bit more. They both got good chins, but chins don't help submissions. They really don't. So I think if there's going to be a finish, it'll be a submission. I don't see either of these guys getting finished by TKO or KO. I can see Yair chopping up Brian Ortega's legs. I could see that happening. But Ortega really doesn't seem to mind that. And he can move out of the way of a lot of them. And he can mix things in on them as well. And throw big power punches that make you not really want to throw leg kicks anymore. But I'm going to go with Yair Ortega. Very close first round. Yair starts winning round 2 quite heavily. Yair starts winning round 3. Ortega starts coming back at the end of round 3. Ortega's pressuring him against a cage, landing some big shots, some big power shots. Yair stumbles backwards, starts looking for spinning techniques and starts dipping his head. And I think when he starts dipping his head against Brian Ortega, I think Ortega might have the best jiu-jitsu in the UFC. Because I've been watching a lot of his fights recently. It's so quick how he latches it up. Listen, Oliveira will get you down and then he'll transition to something. With Ortega, it's in upon contact with you. You dip your head down, it's not like he's setting up the guillotine is in. It's not like he's taking the back to look for the rear naked. The rear naked choke is in and he's on your back. That's it, that's how quick it can be with him. So I think if there's a finish, it's massively favoured towards Ortega getting it. So I'm going to be trusting in Brian Ortega. The speed at which he latched up subs against Volkanovski. And Yair's got a long, scrawny neck as well. So he's built to get guillotined pretty much. I can see Brian Ortega pressuring him in the 3rd round, having a momentum swing. And when Yair gets pressured, every single fight when he gets pressured, he does this little Canelo roll to avoid punches, and he starts rolling and throwing elbows over the top and stuff like that, some inverted elbows and spinning elbows. He always rolls and tucks up like that whenever he gets pressured, and I can see Ortega getting that momentum swing and pressuring him, and if he does, he's getting latched up in a guillotine whenever he does that. So I'm going to call a 3rd round guillotine finish for Brian Ortega, getting it done by submission in a great fight. The winner of this one can maybe take on like a Movsar Evloev or a Bryce Mitchell, or I don't know who else there's going to be in that division coming up. I don't think Josh Emmett. I don't think you should do that. I think you should do Josh Emmett versus Arnold Allen. So there's a guaranteed fresh matchup for Volkanovski when he comes back. I don't want to see Volko fight Ortega again or this guy again. I think you need to do Holloway Ortega versus guys who are getting a massive jump up. But 2 guys in Arnold Allen and Josh Emmett who have already basically earned a title elimination bout at least. They should fight each other to guarantee a fresh matchup for Volk. So I think like Ortega, Yair Rodriguez winner, should take on the winner of maybe Evloev, Bryce Mitchell in October. Let's get it going, featherweights. What's going on? Make some matchups. Like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Those are my predictions. Brian Ortega, 3rd round submission. Toodle pip, I'll see you later. Goodbye.